I just finished watching Black Adam, and I really liked it. But I don't think it's a good movie. Let me explain. What's up, everybody? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and that's right, today we are gonna go over Black Adam, which is the latest DCEU movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, this is a movie that has been anticipated for many years. I feel like The Rock has been working on this for 15 years at this point, 10, 15 years, and it has seen a lot of writes and rewrites and different directors attached to it, and they finally came out with it. Now, oftentimes when a movie like this is delayed and delayed and delayed, and there's different rights and all of these things, they tend not to turn out to be that great, but I actually had a good time watching this movie, which I was kind of surprised by. Maybe I'm a negative Nancy, but after watching the trailer and after reading up on who was making the movie and all of the kind of drama that went into the creative process, I was pretty low on it. I thought it definitely wasn't going to be very good at all. But this movie has a lot of really good pieces to it, but then there are a few that definitely make you realize, oh, this is kind of a Frankenstein's monster of a creative process. So what are some of the things I liked? Well, first off, I will let you know, I like all of the different actors and actresses and their characters. They're all very well played, and they're all really interesting. Although with a lot of the characters, you don't get much of a backstory. This movie is really focused on Black Adam. And so even though there is the Justice Society there, where you have Hawkman and Dr. Fate and a few others, you don't really get a lot of their story, little bits and pieces here and there, but really not a whole lot. But I think everyone played their roles so well, and the way that their characters were written were interesting enough to where I actually want to see a Justice Society movie. I'm sold on these characters, and I want to know more about them. So right off the bat, really great acting across the board, and all of the characters at their core are genuinely interesting and entertaining. Also, I really like what they did with Black Adam. He is not a hero, and they make that very clear throughout the movie. He's also not just a villain. He's somewhere in between. And what I respect about that is that with The Rock, with someone like The Rock, he always plays the hero. He always plays the good guy, the funny guy that everybody likes. But in this movie, although he does have a few moments of those rockisms where he says something funny here and there, he really is a much more gray character, and they kind of lean into that. And then of course you have the Justice Society, led mainly by Hawkman, who is kind of the opposite end of that coin. They are very black and white. You are either a villain or you are a hero, and there is no in between. So you can kind of see where the conflict is going to come when those two parties meet each other. I also feel like there were a number of moments throughout this movie that were genuinely really funny. Now, not to say that they always knocked it out of the park whenever they went to make a joke. There were also a number of jokes that fell pretty flat, but I definitely had a good time and got a few laughs throughout the movie. In addition to that, the action sequences were super dope. Seeing Black Adam fighting Hawkman and the rest of the Justice Society was really cool to see. And a lot of the CG, the animation that they had in the movie, I thought looked really good. So overall, at its core, I think Black Adam is a really entertaining movie. The problem is when you try to kind of pick apart at the different pieces of it and look at them on a deeper level. So before we get into the negative stuff, the things that I didn't quite like about the movie, I will just let you know, if you are just looking for a fun superhero movie that you really can kind of turn your brain off while watching, this is a good one to check out. But if you're someone who maybe is kind of tired of the typical formula of the superhero movies, or maybe you like a little bit more out of your movies and you prefer the superhero movies like the Captain America Winter Soldier movies or things like that where there's a little more meat on the bones, if you will, this is definitely not for you. Probably the biggest issue I had with this one is just the writing in general. For one, the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue is very cheesy. And again, if you're just looking for a fun action-packed movie, that's great. There were a number of moments where several different characters, really their entire arc, they would just say things or do things that had me rolling my eyes in the theater. And I can tell some of the people sitting around me were also kind of chuckling at moments when you really weren't supposed to be laughing just because of how cheesy it was. In addition to that, even though I feel like the concept at large was really interesting and they had a lot that they could have worked with, they kind of didn't take advantage, or at least take full advantage of the story that they had built. So I'm really trying not to spoil anything here, but if you've seen a lot of the trailers, you kind of know the gist of what the story is going to be about. And I feel like they really only touched on a lot of that on the surface level when they could have dived a lot deeper into it. And then finally, when I think about parts of the movie that kind of turned me off, the final act with the main villain really felt like it was just tacked on because they had to. A lot of the movie is dealing with Black Adam and the Justice Society and him coming to terms with whether or not he's a hero or a villain. And then at the end of the movie, there is a big bad, but it almost feels unimportant because that wasn't the point of the whole movie. It almost feels like they just threw that big bad at the end of the movie because that's what you do in a superhero movie. There's someone who's trying to destroy the world and you have to stop them. So that just felt, I wouldn't say out of place, but it just felt like it wasn't deserving of all of the buildup of the movie up to that point. Now again, I don't want to crap on the movie too much because I did overall enjoy myself. I'm just kind of letting you know what some of those little pieces were that didn't quite work. And honestly, based on the bones of the story and of the characters, I feel like they have something they can really build off of here. If they can get some really good writers behind it and a decent director, I feel like the sequel to this could be amazing, which is unfortunately not something you get to say too often with a lot of DC movies. So to kind of sum up my pros and cons, the pros are, I think the acting was really good. A lot of the characters were very likable and entertaining. The overall core concept of what they were trying to do with the story, I thought was really interesting and opens up a lot of opportunity. And there was just a lot of badass fight scenes, which is always great to see in a superhero movie. But as far as the cons are concerned, the script definitely needed some work. Some of the dialogue and some of the smaller or I guess less important story arcs I felt were a little shallow. And at the end of the day, it fell into a lot of the traps that especially some older comic book movies fell into. But with all that being said, I would definitely recommend you check this out in theaters if you are a comic book fan at all. Now, if you're not already, I don't think this is the movie that's going to turn you into a big comic book fan. But if you already are and you've enjoyed any of the DC movies to date, I definitely recommend you check out this one. It is by no means one of the worst DC movies. I wouldn't say it's one of the best, but it's still a pretty good movie and a fun time in theaters. But those are just my thoughts on Black Adam. I definitely want to know what you guys have to say. I feel like this one is going to be pretty mixed, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I also think in the coming days, I'm going to put together a DC movie ranking of all of the DCEU films based on fan and critic scores. So it's not just going to be my opinion on which ones are the best movies and which ones are the worst. It's actually going to be yours. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so that way you can check out that ranking in the next few days. Otherwise, if you want to see more rankings, reviews, trailer reactions, all that good stuff, well, you got to subscribe. All right, my dude, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.